Hello everyone, welcome back to Moonlitwest. Today I have a special story to share with you, a simple yet deeply emotional tale about family love, the quiet sacrifices we sometimes overlook, and the unwavering faith that resides in our hearts. Before we dive into the story, if you enjoy meaningful and heartfelt content like this, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell to join Moonlitwest on this journey of spreading genuine emotions. Now, take a moment, relax, and let your soul absorb this story. I believe it will touch your heart and leave you with profound thoughts about love and sacrifice. Let's begin the story. A Father's Promise. In a hidden corner of the Appalachian Mountains, where ancient oak trees stretch skyward as if to shield the heavens, there stood a small wooden cabin nestled on a hillside. The cabin, built from rough-hewn planks, weathered by time, had a tin roof that creaked with every gust of wind, as though it too struggled against the relentless passage of time. This was the home of a small family of three: Mr. Sam Carter, his 4-year-old daughter Emma, and Anne, Sam's mother. The house was sparsely furnished, with just a few old pieces of furniture, a handmade wooden table, 3 wobbly chairs, and a small bed tucked in the corner of the room where Emma and Anne often slept together. In the kitchen, a small coal stove bore traces of cold ash, and in one corner hung a nearly empty sack of cornmeal. Sam worked tirelessly in a coal mine near the town, several miles from home. The job was grueling, requiring him to spend his days deep underground, surrounded by the constant clanging of tools and the choking dust of coal. The work left him with calloused hands, a gaunt body, and a persistent cough every evening. But the most heartbreaking part was that, no matter how hard Sam worked, his earnings were barely enough to provide his family with sufficient food. Some days, Sam would forgo his meager portion of food so Emma could have enough to eat. Emma, despite her young age, was acutely aware of her family's hardships. She didn't have the pretty toys that other children in town had. Her only plaything was an old doll left by her mother before she passed away. Yet, Emma never complained. She seemed content with the love of her father and grandmother, which made every day feel warm and full. Every evening, after returning from the mine with an air of exhaustion, Sam always spent time with Emma. The two would sit on a rickety chair near the fireplace, the dim glow of the oil lamp illuminating Sam's coal-streaked face and Emma's wide, innocent eyes. "Tell me a story, Daddy," Emma would chirp, her voice as bright as a songbird's, clutching her doll tightly to her chest. Sam would smile, even though his heart was heavy with worry. He'd gently stroke her hair and begin spinning fairy tales he created himself. In these stories, there was always a little girl like Emma, brave, clever, and triumphant in overcoming all odds to find happiness. But the most special part was how he always ended with a promise. "You know what, Emma? One day, you'll have a better life." I promise. Emma looked at her father with absolute trust. To her, he was the strongest hero, and his promise was a magic spell she never doubted. Meanwhile, Anne, sitting silently nearby, would often wipe away tears as she watched the two of them together. She understood better than anyone the burden Sam carried, and knew that the promise wasn't just for Emma, but also a vow Sam made to himself. The three of them endured their many struggles, but love and hope remained the only light guiding them in their little wooden cabin at the foot of the mountain. That year, winter arrived earlier than usual in the Appalachian Mountains. The bitter colds seeped through the cracks in the walls, freezing each breath as if time itself had stilled. In the coal mine, the work became even harsher as orders dwindled. Many workers, like Sam, struggled to earn enough to sustain their families. No one could tell when things would improve, or if they could make it through the winter without sinking deeper into debt. One evening, after finishing a modest meal of corn porridge and a few slices of dry bread, Sam sat by the fireplace, staring into the flickering flames. Emma was playing with her old doll, chattering away as she recounted the stories her father had told her. Sam barely heard her. His mind was consumed with swirling numbers, unpaid debts, and the shadow of an uncertain future. He knew that if they stayed here, he could never give his daughter the better life he had promised her. That night, after Emma had fallen into a deep sleep, Sam sat with Anna in the small kitchen. She was mending Emma's old coat, the oil lamp casting shadows that deepened the wrinkles on her face. "Mom, I can't stay here anymore," Sam said, his voice low but resolute. Anne paused her stitching, her tired eyes lifting to meet her son's. She had known this day would come, but she hadn't expected it so soon. "You really want to go? You know, if you leave, Emma will miss you terribly." Sam nodded, his eyes burning with determination. "I know, but I can't watch Emma grow up in such hardship. I'm going to the city to find work, earn enough money to send back to you and Emma. I promise. I'll be back by the end of the year." Anne sighed, her voice thick with emotion. "If it's what's best for Emma, I won't stop you. But Sam, you must keep your promise. Emma is still young. She needs you." The next morning, at the break of dawn, Sam had everything ready. He wasn't taking much, just an old backpack with a few changes of clothes, a small knife, and some food Anne had packed for him. Sam stood at the front door, taking one last look around as if trying to imprint everything into his memory. The worn roof, the rickety table where Emma loved to draw, and the small bed where his daughter curled up every night. Emma woke up earlier than usual. She wore the thick sweater her grandmother had knitted, her sad eyes fixed on her father as he tightened the straps on his backpack. When Sam stepped toward the door, Emma ran to him, clutching him tightly. "Daddy, do you really have to go?" Her voice trembled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Sam knelt, wrapping his arms around his daughter. "Emma, I have to go, but I promise I'll be back. I'll send money for you and Grandma, so you can have nice clothes and good meals. And remember, I said I'd bring you a Christmas present. Do you believe me?" Emma looked up at her father, her tearful eyes full of hope. "You really will come back, won't you? You won't forget?" "I promise, Emma. I'll come back soon." Sam fought back tears as he kissed her forehead. Anne stood nearby, clutching a scarf tightly in her hands. She knew Sam was hopeful for a brighter future, but she also understood the dangers that awaited her son out there. "Go, Sam, but take care of yourself. Emma and I will be waiting for you." When the old truck belonging to a friend pulled up in front of the house, Sam placed his backpack in the truck bed and turned to look at Emma and Anne one last time. Emma stood by the dirt road, her small hands clutching her doll, her eyes a mix of hope and indescribable sadness. "Come back to me, Daddy," Emma called out as the truck began to roll away. Sam only smiled, raising a hand to wave goodbye. Inside him, that promise burned like a flame, guiding every step he would take on the difficult road ahead. Anne placed a comforting hand on Emma's shoulder. "Your daddy will come back, Emma," he promised. Emma didn't say a word, her eyes fixed on the truck as it disappeared down the dusty road. Her small heart brimmed with trust. In that moment, all her worries seemed to fade away, for she knew her father would never break his promise. While as the truck vanished, leaving only the faint echo of its engine among the mountains, Emma clutched Anne's hand tightly and took small steps back toward their old house. The winding dirt road seemed to stretch endlessly under the cold winter sky. The wind, sweeping down from the mountain peaks, whistled through the leaves, creating an eerie, mournful sound like the earth itself was sighing. Emma turned her head back toward the road her father had taken, her small eyes filled with a sense of emptiness and a budding ache of longing. The wooden house, once so familiar, now felt oddly hollow. The creak of the door as Anne pushed it open only deepened the solitude of the space. Emma quietly sat on the old chair near the fireplace, clutching the doll her father had promised to replace with a new gift. But the fire in the stove burned weakly, unable to chase away the chill that crept into every corner of the house. That night, the howling wind outside seemed as if it would tear the old roof apart. Emma lay curled up on the small bed, wrapped in her grandmother's arms. Anne's silver hair brushed against Emma's forehead, but instead of warmth, it reminded Emma of how fragile the two of them were. "Grandma, does Daddy miss me?" Emma whispered into the night, her large eyes gazing at the shadowy ceiling. "Of course, Emma. Your daddy loves you so much. He's working so you can have a better life. Do you remember his promise?" Anne's voice was gentle, but betrayed a hint of sorrow. Emma nodded and closed her eyes. But Anne did not sleep. She stared out the window, where darkness engulfed the mountains. Worry for Sam consumed her, though she dared not let her granddaughter see. In the days that followed, life for Anne and Emma continued in quiet monotony. Anne took on odd jobs in the town to earn a little money, washing clothes for neighbors, helping out at the local bakery. Though the work was exhausting, she never complained, knowing Emma needed care and support, at least until Sam sent money home. Emma, despite being only 4 years old, began learning how to help her grandmother. She would carry small bundles of firewood from the yard into the house, or pick up bits and pieces in the kitchen. But Emma maintained a special habit. Every evening, as the sunlight began to fade through the trees, she would stand on the hillside where her father had left, gazing down the winding road. She stood there, clutching her doll, her tiny feet tiptoeing as if reaching just a little higher would allow her to see her father returning. Whether in the cold or under the warm sun, whether it rained or snowed, Emma never forgot to wait. Occasionally, Anne watched her granddaughter from behind the door. Her heart ached seeing the small figure standing so forlorn amidst the vast landscape. But she didn't have the heart to call Emma back inside. That first Christmas, the wooden house was cloaked in a somber silence. There were no twinkling lights, no Christmas tree, no gifts. Dinner was nothing more than a thin pot of corn porridge. Emma sat by the window, gazing outside. Snow had begun to fall, blanketing the trees and roof in white. She held her doll tightly and softly asked her grandmother, "Grandma, why hasn't Daddy come back? He promised he would." Anne sat down beside Emma, wrapping her arms around the little girl. "Your daddy is busy working, Emma. He has to work hard to earn enough money to buy you presents. We have to be patient, my dear. But I miss him." Emma's voice trailed off, her eyes brimming with tears. Anne didn't know how to respond. She simply hugged her granddaughter tighter. Deep down, she was filled with worry. Sam hadn't sent any letters or money since he had left. Every night, she prayed for her son's safety and well-being. But the more she thought about it, the more her heart ached for her son, for her granddaughter. Her hands trembled more than ever, not just from the cold, but from an unspoken fear that loomed over her that night under the dim light of the oil lamp. Anne sat sewing Emma's sweater, her cloudy eyes glistening with unshed tears. Emma had fallen asleep, her small face resting on the table, her hands still clutching her doll. Watching her granddaughter's delicate figure, Anne thought to herself, "Sam, come home. Emma needs you, and so do I." The wind howled outside, carrying the sound of brittle branches snapping and falling to the ground. But inside the small house, the grandmother and granddaughter had only each other to rely on, clinging to the fragile hope that one day the father would return, bringing with him the happiness they longed for. Although Emma's life had taken on a new rhythm, every evening, as the sun set, she would return to the hillside, the place where she had waved her father off that cold morning. It wasn't just a dirt road leading to the Appalachian Mountains. It was a place filled with memories, faith, and her connection to the father she loved. On those evenings, as the fiery red sun cast long shadows over the mountains, Emma would stand silently in the vast expanse. She still held her old doll, now faded and frayed with time. Her thin clothes offered little protection against the biting wind that swept across the hillside. Her hair fluttered in the breeze, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the winding road disappeared into the darkness. Emma stood there, small and solitary, but no one could extinguish the flame of hope in her heart. Each time the cold wind blew, she would clutch her doll tighter, as if trying to feel the warmth of her father's embrace again. In her innocent heart, she silently called out, "Daddy, please come home." The surrounding landscape seemed to echo her silent sorrow. The bare trees reached out like brittle hands, waiting for something that might never arrive. The rustling of dry leaves swept by the wind sounded like whispers, telling the story of time. Sometimes, Emma thought she could hear her father's footsteps, or his laughter echoing from somewhere far away. Whenever a truck passed along the dirt road, she would turn suddenly, her eyes lighting up with fragile hope. But each time, the truck would fade into the distance, leaving only a cloud of red dust to settle back into the air. "Daddy will come back," Emma whispered to herself, her trembling voice like a prayer. Day by day, winter returned to summer, and that hillside became the only place where Emma felt close to her father. She never forgot the promise he made the morning he left. "I'll bring you a Christmas present." She didn't know what the present would be, but she believed that when her father returned, everything would be as beautiful as the fairy tales he used to tell her. The townsfolk often saw Emma's small figure standing on the hillside, quietly facing the sky. Some were moved, others felt pity, but no one had the heart to pull her back to reality. Emma stood there as if she were part of the landscape, a living portrait of patience and hope, with her as the only bright spot. As time passed, Emma's longing never faded. Every evening, whether the winds were icy or the sun blazed down, she stood on the hillside. To her, it wasn't just a place of farewell, it was a gateway to her father's promise, a place where she believed love would find its way back, no matter how many years went by. For Emma, her father's promise wasn't just words. It was the only light left in her heart, guiding her hopes for a day when they would be reunited. Emma's life unfolded in an eerie calm, but within her, a quiet flame continued to burn, a flame of love and faith in the father she had never stopped searching for. Growing up amidst pain and loss, Emma decided to become a journalist. She traveled everywhere, documenting life's stories and the hidden corners of the world. Yet, with every step she took, she carried a glimmer of hope to find her father. Through the years of wandering down unfamiliar roads, Emma received various pieces of news. Some people said they had seen a man resembling her father working in the South. Others mentioned an old laborer living in a remote village. Each time, Emma put everything aside and set off on a new journey, only to reach dead ends. Sometimes, she returned from these trips with a heavy heart, but disappointment never extinguished her hope. Every Christmas, when snow blanketed the Appalachian Mountains, Emma returned to the old wooden house, the tiny home she had shared with her father and grandmother. The house still stood, a silent witness to the passing of time. Its worn roof had been repaired, but still bore the marks of harsh years. Emma spent the first days decorating the house. She cleaned every corner, propped up her grandmother's rickety chair, and strung tiny Christmas lights along the windows. She lit a candle in the center of the dining table, just as her grandmother used to do when the family gathered. But no matter how bright the house became, Emma's heart was weighed down by loneliness. There were no longer reminders from her grandmother to bundle up warmly, nor the sound of her father's laughter telling fairy tales by the fire. The house now held only Emma and her memories, making the silence feel suffocating. One afternoon, as the sunlight faded over the hillside, Emma donned a thick wool sweater and stepped outside. She walked along the dirt road, her boots leaving small footprints in the thin layer of snow. The winter wind howled, biting sharply at her skin. When she reached the hillside, the spot where she had bid her father farewell as a 4-year-old child, Emma stopped. The path was the same as it had been, though time had left its mark on every blade of grass and stone. The old oak trees in the distance stood like weary sentinels guarding the past. Emma stood silently, her eyes fixed on the road that stretched into the encroaching darkness. The sky shifted to a cold, gray hue, with the last rays of light glinting weakly over the snow. She knew that today, like every other day, no one would appear at the end of the road, but she couldn't stop herself from hoping. The wind grew stronger, tossing her long brown hair into the air. She clutched her scarf tightly, her gaze unwavering on the horizon. Beside her, the snow fell gently, covering the ground in a delicate white sheet, like old memories fading yet never truly disappearing. "Dad," Emma whispered, her breath forming white clouds in the air. "Can you hear me calling?" Every Christmas, at this exact hour, she returned to this spot, knowing that the miracle she longed for might never come. But Emma's hope remained unshaken. The landscape around the hillside seemed to hold its breath with her. The bare branches of the trees trembled softly in the wind, the rustling of dry leaves adding texture to the poignant silence. A small bird perched on a branch, chirping faintly before flying into the night. As the last light faded completely, Emma turned and made her way back to the house, her footsteps leaving long trails in the snow. She returned to the warmth of the wooden cabin and lit a candle on the dining table, as if to keep alive the memories of her father and grandmother. Every Christmas was a time for Emma to remember her family, her father's love, her grandmother's care, and the promises that had never been fulfilled. The loneliness never diminished, but within her remained a fierce strength, the strength of belief that one day, from the farthest reaches of the dirt road, her father would return, embrace her, and fulfill the promise he had made so many years ago. For Emma, hope never extinguished, and the love of family was a flame that burned brightly in her heart, defying time and distance. One summer morning, as golden sunlight filtered through the dense canopy of trees, the Appalachian town was suddenly abuzz with the sound of machinery. The authorities had decided to construct a new road cutting through the forest behind the hillside, a place seemingly forgotten by time. Bulldozers worked tirelessly, digging into the soil and rocks that had lain undisturbed for decades. Now nearing 40, Emma stood by the edge of the new road, silently watching as layers of earth were unearthed. She didn't understand why she felt drawn to this place, only that her heart seemed to whisper that something here was meant for her. And then, one afternoon, as the sun tilted toward the mountains, a worker came running to share astonishing news. They had uncovered an old truck buried deep beneath the dirt and rocks. The truck was completely rusted, but inside it, they found a few items, including a tattered backpack and a small photograph, yellowed with age. Emma held the photograph in trembling hands, unable to suppress her emotions. It was a picture of her as a 4-year-old, clutching her old doll, her innocent smile radiant beside her father. It was the same photograph her father had taken with him the day he left home, and now it had returned to her, bringing with it the heartbreaking truth she had never dared to imagine. As the authorities continued their investigation, they discovered a small box in the backpack. Inside were a few personal items, a worn handkerchief, and a letter hurriedly written on a crumpled piece of paper. The shaky handwriting appeared to come from an exhausted hand, yet every word seemed to transcend time, piercing straight into Emma's heart. "My dearest Emma, I will return as soon as I've earned enough. Remember that I love you more than anything in this world." Emma read the letter over and over, tears streaming down her cheeks. She could feel her father's love in every word, his determination and hope carried with him to his final moments. Her heart ached, but at the same time, it was filled with an overwhelming sense of peace. She understood that, although her father couldn't return as he had promised, he had held onto his love for her until the very end. That evening, Emma stood on the hillside where she had waited for her father throughout her childhood. The fiery red hues of the sunset bathed the Appalachian Mountains, and the gentle light enveloped the landscape as if nature itself shared in her loss. In her hands were her father's letter and the old doll she had carried with her all her life. Emma closed her eyes, letting the wind caress her face. She felt no anger or regret anymore, for she knew her father had done everything he could, and his love was the most precious gift she would carry forever. She whispered, her voice as soft as the breeze, "Daddy, thank you. I will live my best life, so don't worry anymore. I love you." As the day's last light faded away, a flame continued to burn bright in Emma's heart, a flame of love, hope, and gratitude. Dear friends, family love is something that never fades, no matter how much time or circumstance separates us. The sacrifices of parents, though often silent and unseen, are guiding lights that lead their children to better lives. Love never truly disappears. It changes form, becoming the strength we need to move forward. The story ends with the image of Emma standing on the hillside, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She was no longer waiting for a miracle, because she had come to realize that her father had never truly left her. He lived on in the love he left behind. Today's story concludes here, but I believe its echoes will linger in your heart. Family love, even when unspoken, is an invisible strength that guides us through life's ups and downs. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and share it with your loved ones. Don't forget to subscribe to Moonlitwest so we can continue exploring meaningful emotional journeys like this together. Thank you for listening to this story with your whole heart, and always remember, in the love of family, even when time or distance separates us, the bonds of love remain unbreakable. See you in the next story. Wishing you and your loved ones peace and happiness always. Until next time, under the moonlight of Moonlitwest.